The night before the beach wedding, cold wind whipping through my hair, I received a text. "Mum, just sign off on one more small charge. Consider it your wedding gift." I opened my banking app and saw $218,000 in wedding expenses already charged to credit accounts opened in my name. The next morning, I was seated at a table near the restroom door while my new daughter-in-law's mother was being called Mom in front of 300 guests. If their gift was debt that would destroy my retirement, then my gift in return would be a contract and a night of cut power, repossessed props, and the truth broadcast live. My name is Eleanor Whitman, Nora, to anyone who's known me longer than 5 minutes and at 58 years old. I thought I'd seen every possible way a family could disappoint you. Turns out, I was wrong. I'd spent 35 years building something most people take for granted perfect credit. 820. That number meant more to me than any inheritance, any lottery ticket, any get-rich-quick scheme my late husband's brothers used to pitch at family dinners. It was my freedom score, my ticket to retiring at 60 instead of 70, my proof that a widow from Portsmouth, Maine, could build something solid on her own. The call from Harborline Credit Union came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing retirement community brochures. "Mrs. Whitman, we're calling to confirm the recent activity on your new Platinum card. The charges from Oraline and Tide events." My stomach dropped. "What Platinum card?" "The one opened last month with your electronic signature, along with the 3 store accounts, Venetian Bridal, Lux Rentals, and the Crystal Gallery." I drove straight to their fraud department, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The evidence was laid out across the desk like a crime scene DocuSign logs showing my social security number, electronic signatures that looked nothing like mine, and charges that made my eyes water. $42,000 at the florist, $38,000 for venue enhancement, $26,000 for something called bespoke guest experiences. "The IP address," the fraud investigator said, sliding a paper across the desk. "Traces to your son's apartment. Mark, my only child. The boy I'd raised alone after his father died, who I'd put through college by working double shifts at Blue Mesa Supply, managing accounts receivable until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. The same son who was getting married in 4 days to Savannah Reed, daughter of the illustrious Reed family who owned half the commercial real estate in southern Maine. That night, I confronted him over the phone. His voice was casual, dismissive even. "Mom, relax. You said you'd help with the wedding." "I said I'd contribute $5,000, not co-sign for $250,000 in debt." "It's not debt. It's an investment in our future. Savannah's family has connections. This wedding is our entrance into their world. With my credit, with my financial future." There was a pause. Then, "Look, it's done. The contracts are signed. Just consider it your wedding gift, okay? The gift of letting your son have the wedding that sets him up for life." The text came an hour later, while I was still staring at the stack of fraudulent applications. "Mum, just sign off on one more small charge. Consider it your wedding gift." Small. $92,000 for the final payment to Breakwater House was small to him. I spent that night going through everything with my magnifying glass, the way I used to review contracts at Blue Mesa before signing off on 6-figure supply deals. The patterns were clear. Mark had used information from my tax returns, which I'd given him to review my retirement planning to open accounts. He'd forged my electronic signature using a DocuSign account he'd created with a variation of my email. Every vendor had been told I was the silent financial partner who preferred to handle everything digitally. But here's what Mark didn't know about his mother. I hadn't spent 3 decades in accounts receivable without learning how contracts really work. And buried in the Breakwater House agreement was a beautiful clause. Final payment contingent upon satisfaction of the account holder of record. The account holder of record was me. Wednesday morning. I called Rita Gomez at Fairwind Legal. We'd worked together back when Blue Mesa was fighting off a hostile takeover, and she owed me a favor for finding the discrepancy that saved the company $12 million. Nora, this is identity theft. Your son could face serious charges. I don't want him in prison. Rita, I want something else. Which is, I want him to own this debt, publicly, completely. And I want every single person at that wedding to know exactly what kind of man Savannah Reed is marrying. Rita laughed, the kind of laugh that meant someone was about to get professionally destroyed. You know what, I think we can arrange that. We spent the next 2 days crafting documents with the precision of a surgeon. A conditional gift letter that Mark had already signed. He never read anything. Just like his father, that stated any gift was void in cases of fraud. Transfer of liability forms that would need to be signed by Mark, Savannah, and witnessed by her family. And my personal favorite, a revocation of payment authorization that would trigger exactly at 9 p.m. on the wedding night if my conditions weren't met. You're playing with fire, my friend Bev Larkin said when I showed her the plan. This could destroy your relationship with Mark forever. I looked at her over my reading glasses. Bev, he already destroyed it. He stole my identity, my credit, and my retirement. All I'm doing is returning his gift. The signs had been there for months, little breadcrumbs of disrespect I'd chosen to ignore because mothers are trained to forgive. The first was the meeting with the wedding planner that I wasn't invited to. Mark called it an oversight. But Savannah's Instagram story that day showed her mother, Luann, and Mark at Oraline and Tide events, champagne glasses raised, with the caption, "Planning the wedding of the century with my 2 favorite people, 2, not 3. Then came the instructions about the wedding weekend. Mark had texted me a list that read like a performance contract. Don't mention your job at Blue Mesa, say you're a private investor if anyone asks. Don't wear your usual St. Christopher pendant. Savannah thinks religious jewelry is tacky. Don't bring up Dad's death or being a widow. The Reeds don't like sob stories." The Reeds. Everything revolved around the Reeds and their comfort, their image, their approval. Luann Reed, with her Botoxed forehead and Hermes collection, who'd looked at my Toyota Camry in their driveway and asked if I was having financial difficulties. This was the woman my son wanted to impress by destroying my financial future. Thursday afternoon, 2 days before the wedding, I discovered exactly how deep the disrespect ran. The wedding coordinator called to confirm my seating assignment. "Mrs. Whitman, you're at table 19. I pulled up the seating chart she emailed. Table 19 was in the corner by the service corridor, where the waitstaff would brush past carrying dirty dishes. The tables were arranged in order of importance, emanating from the head table like ripples in water. Tables 1 through 5. Reed family and their business associates. Tables 6 through 10. Savannah's sorority sisters and Mark's fraternity brothers. Tables 11 through 15. Family friends and colleagues. And table 19. That's where they put me, alongside Mark's father's ancient aunt, who barely knew him, and the wedding photographer's assistant. But here's what made my blood truly boil. Luann Reed was seated at table 2, directly next to the head table, in the position traditionally reserved for the mother of the groom. I called Mark immediately. There must be a mistake with the seating. Mum, it's not a big deal. Savannah's family is paying for most of the wedding. With my credit, and they have certain expectations about the arrangements. Look, Luann is going to be more involved in our lives going forward. Savannah wants her mum front and center. You understand? Right. No. I didn't understand how my son could seat me with the hired help while elevating the woman whose daughter was helping him commit fraud. But I kept my voice steady. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever makes you happy. That evening, I met with the fraud department at Harborline Credit Union again. The investigator, a young woman named Michelle, who reminded me of myself 30 years ago, laid out my options. If you file charges, Mrs. Whitman, your son will likely face 5 to 10 years. Identity theft is a federal crime when it crosses state lines, which these online applications did. What if I don't file charges? Then you're on the hook for everything. The credit card companies won't reverse the charges without a police report. You'd be looking at minimum payments of about $4,200 a month, plus interest. $4,200 a month. My entire retirement budget was $5,000. There's a third option, Michelle said carefully. You could file the report, but make it conditional. Give them a chance to transfer the debt voluntarily. If they don't comply, the charges become active. How long do I have to decide? The wedding is Saturday. I can hold the paperwork until Monday morning. But Mrs. Whitman. She leaned forward. I've seen this before. Family members who steal from family always do it again. They justify it, minimize it, blame the victim. Your son isn't just stealing money, he's stealing your future. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop and did what I'd trained myself never to do. I looked at Savannah's social media. Her Instagram was a shrine to excess. The engagement ring purchased. I now realized, with my credit, was featured in no fewer than 47 posts. The bachelorette party in Cabo, the designer dress fittings, the tasting menu at restaurants I couldn't pronounce. And then I found it. A video from 3 weeks ago. Savannah and her bridesmaids were drinking wine, discussing the wedding. Someone asked about the budget. Oh, Mark's mom is loaded. Savannah laughed, her voice slightly slurred. She's been hiding money for years, pretending to be middle class. Mark says she has at least $500,000 saved. She can afford to give us our dream wedding. It's the least she can do after Mark had to grow up without a father. The least I could do. I closed the laptop and made my decision. If they wanted to paint me as the rich widow hoarding money, I'd show them exactly what kind of resources I really had. Not money, but knowledge, contracts, and 35 years of learning how to make documents dance. The fraud wasn't just financial. It was emotional, social, psychological. They'd stolen my identity in every way that mattered, reducing me to a credit score and a seat by the bathroom. Time to steal it back. Friday morning, 24 hours before the wedding. I sat in Rita Gomez's office at Fairwind Legal with my war counsel, Rita, my accountant Bev Larkin, and surprisingly, Michelle from the credit union's fraud department, who'd taken a personal day to help. Let's review the battlefield, Rita said, spreading documents across her conference table like a general planning an invasion. We have ironclad evidence of identity theft. We have the forged DocuSign signatures. We have the IP addresses. We have Mark's voicemail admitting to the fraud. What we need now is leverage. The leverage is the wedding itself. I said. They care more about appearances than anything else. Use that. Michelle pulled up the contracts on her laptop. Every vendor agreement lists you as the primary account holder. Legally, you can modify or cancel services until the moment of final payment, which is scheduled for 9 p.m. tomorrow, Bev added, reviewing the payment schedule. $92,000 to Breakwater House, $18,000 to the caterer for the premium bar package, $12,000 for the late-night comfort food station, and another $23,000 in various final payments. Rita smiled her shark smile. Here's the beautiful part. The Breakwater House contract has a clause I've never seen before. Client maintains right to withhold final payment pending satisfaction of services, with immediate cessation of any services not prepaid. Whoever negotiated this for them is an idiot, or never expected someone to actually read it, I said. Now, Rita continued, here's what I've prepared. She handed me a stack of documents. First, a conditional gift letter that retroactively nullifies any claim that this was a gift, due to fraudulent procurement. Second, a transfer of financial liability form that moves all debt from your name to Mark and Savannah jointly, with Luann Reed as a guarantor for any shortfall. Will they sign it? They will, if the alternative is no lights, no music, no food, and a fraud investigation announced to 300 guests. Michelle leaned forward. There's something else. I did some digging. Savannah's family isn't as wealthy as they appear. They're leveraged to the hilt. 3 mortgages on their properties, 2 business loans coming due. This wedding is as much about maintaining their image as anything else. That explained the desperation to use my credit. They needed someone else to fund their fantasy. What about the vendors? I asked. Rita pulled out her phone. I've already spoken with the major ones, explained the situation, that there's been identity theft, and that any final payments will need to be verified directly with you tomorrow night. They're nervous, but willing to cooperate, especially since I mentioned the words accessory to fraud and civil litigation. The transportation company was particularly interested, Bev added with a grin. Turns out they've been burned by the Reeds before. They're happy to play along. We spent the next 3 hours refining the plan. Every detail had to be perfect, every document legally bulletproof. Rita contacted the DJ, the lighting company, the florist, the classic car rental, everyone who hadn't been paid in full. Each one received the same message. Final payment was contingent on written confirmation from Eleanor Whitman personally, delivered at the venue. Now for the nuclear option, Rita said, pulling out the last document. The criminal complaint. Filled out, notarized, ready to file. All it needs is your signature and a phone call to submit it electronically. When would I use this? If they refuse to sign the transfer documents, if they try to intimidate you, if they do anything other than comply completely. She looked me in the eye. Nora, I need you to understand. Once you start this, there's no going back. Your relationship with Mark will never be the same. It already isn't, I said, signing my name on the authorization line. He ended our relationship the moment he stole from me. That afternoon, I had one more task. I drove to Radio Shack and bought a small digital recorder and a wireless microphone system that could connect to the venue's sound system. The kid at the counter showed me how to use it, how to override the DJ's board if necessary. Planning something special for a wedding? He asked. You could say that. My last stop was the bank. I moved everything, my savings, my checking, my investment accounts to a new institution across town. I closed every account Mark might have had information about, put fraud alerts on everything, and locked my credit with every bureau. The manager, who'd known me for 20 years, was shocked. "Mrs. Whitman, is everything all right?" "It will be," I said. "After tomorrow night?" That evening, as I packed my outfit for the wedding, a conservative navy dress that screamed "forgotten relative," my phone rang. It was Mark. "Mum, just confirming you're all set for tomorrow. Remember, the ceremony starts at 4:30. I'll be there. And Mom, thanks for understanding about the seating and for the gift. Savannah and I really appreciate everything." The casual cruelty of it, the way he could steal from me and thank me in the same breath, solidified my resolve. "Oh, Mark," I said, keeping my voice sweet. "I have a gift for you tomorrow, something special I want to give you and Savannah at the reception." "You don't have to do that. Mum, your financial support has been gift enough." Financial support, not theft, not fraud, support. "No, sweetheart," I said, looking at the stack of legal documents that would destroy his fantasy. "I insist. Every mother wants to give her son something memorable on his wedding day." The rehearsal dinner at the Anchor Room on Friday night was where the mask finally slipped completely. I arrived to find place cards at the entrance, and mine had a special designation, Eleanor Whitman, wedding sponsor, not mother of the groom, sponsor. Luann Reed swept over in her designer cocktail dress, air-kissing me like we were old friends. "Eleanor, so generous of you to make this all possible. Mark says you've been absolutely wonderful about the financial arrangements. Has he—" I kept my voice neutral. "Oh, yes. Though I must say, it's unusual for the groom's family to cover everything. In our circles, these things are typically shared." She laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "But then, Mark mentioned you'd been quite successful in your investments." My investments. My son had turned me into a fictional Wall Street wizard to explain away his theft. During dinner, I was placed at the far end of the table. Naturally. The toasts began, and Savannah's father stood, raising his glass. To Mark and Savannah, and to the families joining together, especially to Luann, who's gaining not just a son-in-law, but a business partner in Mark's new venture. New venture. I watched Mark's face carefully. He avoided my eyes. Savannah's brother went next. "And let's thank the woman making this all possible, the silent partner bankrolling this whole spectacular weekend." Laughter rippled through the room. Silent partner. That's what I'd become. A checkbook with no voice. When it was my turn to speak last, of course I stood slowly. "I want to tell you all a story about Mark," I began. The room quieted. When he was 7, his father had just died. We were struggling. I was working double shifts. And one day he asked me, "Mum, are we poor?" And I told him, "No, sweetheart. We're rich in what matters. Integrity, honor, trust." I looked directly at my son. I hope Mark remembers that conversation tomorrow, because real wealth isn't what you can take. It's what you can build yourself. Mark's face had gone pale. Savannah whispered something in his ear. After dinner, the wedding planner, Christina from Oraline and Tide Events, pulled me aside. "Mrs. Whitman, about tomorrow's final payments. You'll have them by 9 p.m., I said. "If everything goes according to plan." Just make sure you have my phone number handy." She looked nervous, but nodded. Later, as guests mingled over cocktails, Mark finally approached me alone on the terrace. "Mum, what was that speech about? Just sharing memories, sweetheart?" It sounded like a threat. I pulled out the conditional gift letter from my purse. "Speaking of gifts, I need you to sign this. Just a formality for my tax records." "What is it?" "Read it and find out." He glanced at it, impatient. "Mum, I don't have time for this. The Reeds want to go over the ceremony order again. Sign it, or I call Harborline Credit Union right now and report the fraud." His head snapped up. "You wouldn't." "Try me." His hand shook slightly as he signed. He didn't read past the first paragraph, exactly as I'd expected. The boy who'd stolen my identity couldn't be bothered to read the document that would hang him. "There," he said, throwing the pen down. "Happy. Getting there." Savannah appeared, linking her arm through Mark's. "Mrs. Whitman, we're so excited about tomorrow. The photographer wants to know when you'll be ready for the mother-son photos." "Oh, I thought Luann was handling the mother duties," I said innocently. Savannah's smile flickered. "She's my mother?" "Of course. How silly of me to be confused." As they walked away, I heard Savannah hiss, "I told you she was going to be difficult." The rest of the evening was a study in exclusion. Every group photo somehow forgot to include me. Every conversation I joined suddenly needed to move elsewhere. When the party favors were distributed silver picture frames with "Mark and Savannah Forever" engraved on them, there weren't enough. And guess who didn't get one? But the best moment came when Luann, after her third martini, cornered me by the bar. "Eleanor, I need to be frank. In our family, we have certain standards. Mark is adapting beautifully. But you, well, perhaps it would be best if you took more of a background role going forward." "Background role?" "You know, less involved. Mark and Savannah will be building their life in our world now. The country club, the charity boards, the business connections. It's not really—" She gestured at my simple dress. "Your scene?" "You're right," I said. "It's not my scene. I prefer environments where people pay their own bills." She laughed, missing the point entirely. "Exactly that working-class pride. It's admirable but unnecessary now. Mark has us." As I drove home that night, I thought about what Luann had said. Mark had them now. The Reeds, with their mortgaged houses and maxed-out credit lines, living their champagne lifestyle on other people's money. Tomorrow, they could have him entirely, but they'd be paying for him themselves. I stopped at Rita's office, where she was waiting with the final documents. Everything was ready. The transfer of liability forms were perfect, authored to be legally binding the moment they were signed. "Last chance to back out," Rita said. "Did you see the rehearsal dinner bill?" I asked. $8,000 for 60 people. Charged to my American Express, the one Mark opened last month. Rita shook her head. "Then we proceed as planned." I signed the final authorization, giving Rita power to file the criminal complaint if needed. The wedding was in 18 hours. The stage was set. The only question was whether Mark would play his part or force me to bring down the curtain entirely. Saturday arrived with perfect beach weather, clear skies, gentle breeze, the Atlantic Ocean sparkling like Savannah's overpriced tiara. I arrived at Breakwater House at 3:30 p.m., an hour before the ceremony, my navy dress practically invisible among the parade of designer gowns and custom suits. The venue was stunning. I had to admit. My money had been well spent. Thousands of white roses climbed architectural frames. Crystal chandeliers hung from the tent ceiling, and a string quartet played on the lawn overlooking the sea. The classic cars, a white 1965 Rolls-Royce and two vintage Bentleys, gleamed in the parking area. I found my seat for the ceremony. 5th row, far left, behind Mark's college roommates. Luann Reed, meanwhile, was escorted to the front row by an usher, taking the seat traditionally reserved for the mother of the groom. The photographer captured her arrival from 3 angles. My arrival wasn't photographed at all. At 4:25, I received a text from Christina, the wedding planner. Mrs. Whitman, gentle reminder about tonight's payments. The vendors are getting anxious. 9 p.m., I replied. Everything depends on 9 p.m. The ceremony began at 4:30, sharp. Mark stood at the altar looking handsome in his custom tuxedo, $12,000 at Benedetti's, charged to my visa. When the music changed and Savannah appeared, the crowd gasped appropriately. The dress was a masterpiece of beading and lace, reportedly $40,000 from Venetian Bridal. During the vows, I almost laughed when Mark promised to honor and cherish Savannah. He couldn't honor his own mother. How would he honor his wife? After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, I stationed myself strategically near the sound system, befriending the DJ with a story about my late husband being a musician. He showed me the setup, not knowing I was memorizing every connection, every switch. The father-daughter dance is at 8:15, he said, showing me the schedule. Mother-son dance right after. Oh, I don't think there's a mother-son dance planned, I said. He checked his list. You're right. That's weird. Must be an oversight. It wasn't an oversight. Dinner service began at 6:30. I found table 19 exactly where expected, tucked in the corner, the service door swinging open every 30 seconds as waiters rushed past. My table mates included Mark's father's elderly aunt, Martha, who kept calling me by my late husband's name, and the assistant photographer who spent the entire meal on his phone. From my exile, I watched the head table. Mark and Savannah glowed under the spotlight, flanked by their wedding party. Luann had somehow positioned herself at the main table, in what should have been my seat. She raised toast after toast, each one emphasizing her joy at gaining a son. At 7:45, I opened my banking app. The day's charges were already posting. Another $6,000 for day of expenses. My credit utilization was now at 91%. 8 o'clock. The speeches began. Savannah's father talked about success and connections. Luann gushed about the joining of families, never once mentioning me. The best man told embarrassing stories about Mark that carefully avoided any mention of his childhood or his mother. 8:30. The cake cutting. A 7-tier monstrosity that cost $8,000, decorated with sugar flowers that matched the real ones. Savannah smooshed cake into Mark's face while everyone laughed. The photographer captured every angle. 8:45. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to my attorney Rita. 15 minutes. Be ready. 8:50. I texted Christina the planner. Please gather Mark, Savannah, and Luann in the coordination room at 9. There's an issue with the final payment. 8:55. I reached into my purse and activated the digital recorder. The wireless mic was already in my pocket, ready to connect to the sound system if needed. 8:58. Michelle from the credit union texted, "Fraud report locked and loaded. Just say the word." 8:59. I stood up from table 19, smoothed my invisible navy dress, and walked toward the coordination room. My phone showed 8:59 and 50 seconds. 9 p. My phone buzzed with the automated payment reminder from Breakwater House. $92,000 due now. I opened the payment portal, looked at the button that would authorize the transfer, and closed the app without paying. Then I opened my email and sent the pre-written message to every vendor. This is Eleanor Whitman, account holder for the Whitman-Reed wedding. Due to fraudulent charges on my accounts, I am hereby revoking all payment authorizations effective immediately. Any services not already paid in full should cease until further notice. Please direct all inquiries to the coordination room. The first domino had fallen. Within 30 seconds, the uplighting around the tent flickered and dimmed to emergency levels only. The DJ's music continued, that was prepaid, but the light show stopped. The bartenders began putting covers on the premium bottles, switching to house brands only. I entered the coordination room to find Christina pacing frantically, phone pressed to her ear. What do you mean the payment didn't process? Check again. Mark burst in 30 seconds later. Savannah and Luann close behind. What's going on? Mark demanded. Why are the lights going out? I stood by the window, backlit by the ocean sunset, holding my folder of documents. Hello, Mark? We need to discuss your wedding gift. Mum, what did you do? I stopped payment. On everything. Savannah's face went white under her makeup. You can't do that. We have 300 guests. I can, and I did. You see, when someone steals your identity and opens credit cards in your name, you have the right to stop any fraudulent charges. Luann stepped forward, her voice shrill. This is ridiculous. Just pay the vendors, and we'll sort this out later. No. I opened my folder. Here's what's going to happen. Mark and Savannah are going to sign these transfer of financial liability documents, accepting full responsibility for all wedding debts. Luann, you'll co-sign as guarantor. Then you'll all stand in front of your guests and announce that you've been using my credit without permission. You're insane, Mark said. I pulled out my phone and played his voicemail on speaker. Mom, you promised to help with the wedding. Just let us charge what we need. Consider it your gift. Then I showed them the DocuSign logs, the IP addresses, the forged signatures. One call to Michelle at Harborline Credit Union, and you're facing federal fraud charges. Mark, 5 to 10 years. Maybe Savannah can wait for you. Maybe not. The room was silent, except for the distant sound of confused guests, wondering why their champagne had disappeared. Or, I continued, you sign the papers, make the announcement, and the party continues. Your choice. You have 5 minutes to decide. The coordination room erupted into chaos. Savannah was crying, her mascara creating dark rivers down her cheeks. Luann was screaming about lawsuits and social destruction. Mark stood frozen, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally, desperate calculation. You're bluffing, he said. You won't ruin your only son's wedding. I'm not ruining anything, I replied calmly. I'm returning your gift. You wanted me to gift you this wedding. Fine. But gifts come with cards that tell the truth about who's giving what. Christina burst through the door, her phone in one hand and tablet in the other. Mrs. Whitman, the vendors are threatening to pull everything. The catering team is packing up the comfort food station, the vintage car drivers are leaving, and the lighting company is sending someone to collect their equipment. They can't do that, Savannah shrieked. We have contracts. Yes, I said. Contracts in my name, which I'm choosing not to honor due to fraud. Luann grabbed my arm. Eleanor, Let's discuss this reasonably. What do you want? Money. An apology. A better seat at family gatherings. I shook her off. I want my son to take responsibility for stealing $218,000 from his mother. It wasn't stealing, Mark exploded. You promised to help. I promised $5,000. You helped yourself to 43 times that amount. Through the window, I could see guests starting to mill around confused. The tent was now lit only by the emergency lighting and candles on the tables. Servers were whispering to each other, unsure whether to bring out the next course. 3 minutes, I said, checking my phone. Mark grabbed the transfer of liability documents, scanning them frantically. This makes us responsible for everything. All the debt, all the interest, everything. Yes. The debt you created in my name becomes yours. That's only fair. Wouldn't you say? And we have to announce it in front of everyone. Savannah's voice was barely a whisper. Every guest out there thinks I'm the generous mother who paid for this spectacle. They should know the truth that you stole from me, and I'm choosing not to press charges in exchange for public accountability. This is extortion, Luann spat. No, this is consequence. My phone rang. It was the DJ. Mrs. Whitman. I've been told to stop the music after this song unless payment is confirmed. What should I do? Give me 2 more minutes, I said, putting him on speaker so everyone could hear. If you don't hear from me, announce to the guests that there's been a financial issue that needs to be resolved. Mark's face went white. You told the DJ. I told everyone. The florist is ready to remove the arrangements. The transportation company has already started recalling the vintage cars. Look outside. They all rushed to the window. Sure enough. The white Rolls-Royce was pulling away, its driver having received my cancellation notice. 1 minute, I said. Savannah grabbed Mark's arm. Sign it. Just sign it. We can't afford this. He hissed at her. We can't afford not to. She turned to her mother. Mom, please. Your friends are out there. The Vanderhills, the Morgans, everyone from the club. If this gets out... Luann's face had gone from red to pale. Social destruction, the one thing that terrified her more than financial ruin. Where do we sign? Luann asked through gritted teeth. I laid out the documents on the table. Mark and Savannah sign here, accepting full financial responsibility. Luann, you sign here as guarantor. Then Rita, my attorney who's waiting outside, will notarize everything. And the announcement? Mark asked. You'll go to the microphone and explain that there was a misunderstanding about the financial arrangements, that you've now taken responsibility for all wedding costs, and that you apologize for any confusion. That's humiliating. That's accountability. The music stopped. The sudden silence from the tent was deafening. 300 guests were about to wonder why their party had ended. Sign now, or I make the call to the fraud department, I said, my finger hovering over Michelle's contact. Mark grabbed the pen and signed with angry slashes. Savannah followed, her hand shaking. Luann signed last, her signature barely legible. Rita, I called. My attorney entered, notary stamp in hand. She'd been waiting in the hallway, listening to everything through the door I'd deliberately left cracked. I need to verify you're all signing voluntarily, Rita said formally. Do you understand what you're signing? They all nodded miserably. Rita notarized the documents with professional efficiency, then handed me the completed papers. These are legally binding. Any attempt to renege, and Mrs. Whitman can pursue both civil and criminal charges. I picked up my phone and started typing. I'm sending payment confirmations to the vendors now. You have about 60 seconds before the lights come back on and the music resumes. I suggest you use that time to prepare your announcement. What exactly do we say? Savannah asked, her voice broken. The truth. That you made assumptions about my financial support that weren't accurate. That you've now taken proper responsibility for the costs. That you apologize for any inconvenience. And if we don't... I held up my phone showing the fraud report ready to send. Then you can explain to your 300 guests why the groom was arrested at his own wedding. The lights flickered back on. The music resumed. Christina's tablet started pinging with confirmations from vendors. Showtime, I said, opening the door. After you. Mark led the broken procession toward the main tent. Savannah tried to fix her makeup as she walked. Luann followed, like she was heading to an execution. I stayed back with Rita. Think they'll actually do it? Oh, they'll do it, Rita said. The alternative is social and financial suicide. The Reeds can't afford either. We watched as Mark took the microphone from the DJ. The tent fell silent. 300 faces turned toward the groom, expecting perhaps another toast to love and happiness. Instead, they got something far more valuable, the truth. Mark stood at the microphone, his hand visibly trembling. The tent full of guests waited expectantly, champagne glasses raised for what they assumed would be another toast. Instead, his voice cracked as he began. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to address something important. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Savannah stood beside him, her fixed smile wobbling like a candle flame in wind. There's been a misunderstanding about the financial arrangements for this wedding, Mark continued. We, Savannah and I, made assumptions about my mother's support that weren't accurate. The murmurs grew louder. I saw phones starting to appear, guests sensing drama worth recording. That's not good enough, I said quietly. Stepping forward with my own microphone, the wireless one I'd connected to the sound system earlier. My voice boomed through the speakers. Tell them what you really did. Mark? 300 heads swiveled between us like spectators at a tennis match. Mom, please, tell them, or I will. Mark's face crumbled. We used my mother's credit without her full permission. We've now taken responsibility for all wedding costs. Gasps echoed through the tent. Someone dropped a champagne glass. The Vanderhills, seated at table 3, were already whispering frantically. And, I prompted, and we apologize for any confusion this may have caused. To whom? I pressed. Mark looked at me with eyes that mixed hatred and defeat. We apologize to my mother, Eleanor Whitman, for taking advantage of her trust. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Luann, desperate to salvage something, grabbed the microphone. What Mark means is there was a miscommunication about the financial gift. There was no miscommunication. I interrupted, my voice clear through the speakers. My son stole my identity, opened credit cards in my name, and charged $218,000 without my knowledge or consent. I discovered this 3 days ago. The crowd erupted. Phones were now openly recording. Several of Savannah's sorority sisters were live streaming on Instagram. However, I continued, raising my voice over the chaos, I've chosen not to press criminal charges. Mark, Savannah, and Mrs. Reed have signed legal documents accepting full financial responsibility for all debts incurred. The wedding will continue. But I want everyone here to know this celebration is not my gift. It's their debt. Savannah burst into tears and ran toward the bathroom, her bridesmaids chasing after her. Mark stood frozen at the microphone stand, looking like a man watching his life collapse in real time. But Luann, veteran of 1,000 country club battles, tried one last desperate move. She pulled out her checkbook with a flourish. "This is ridiculous," she announced. "I'll write a check right now for everything. This family drama doesn't need to ruin Savannah's special day." "A check?" I asked, walking closer to the microphone. "From which account? The one with 3 overdrafts this month? Or the business account that's been frozen for non-payment of taxes?" Luann's face went white. How did I know Michelle at the credit union had done very thorough research? When you're investigating fraud, you investigate everyone involved. That's private financial information." Luann sputtered. "So was mine, until your daughter and my son made it their business." The crowd was absolutely riveted. This was better than any reality show. I saw one of Mark's groomsmen mouth "holy shit" to another. Christina the planner appeared at my elbow, tablet in hand. "Mrs. Whitman, the vendors need to know, do we continue with full service or basic only?" I looked at Mark, who seemed to have aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "That depends. Mark, are you prepared to honor the contracts you signed in my name?" "We can't afford." "Then basic service only." I told Christina. "Cancel the comfort food station, the premium bar package, the late-night dessert table, and the fireworks display." Fireworks. I hadn't known about those. $15,000, Christina whispered. "Scheduled for 10:30. Mark finally found his voice. "You're destroying my wedding out of spite." "No, I'm giving you exactly the wedding you can afford, which, based on your actual financial situation versus the fantasy you've been selling, is significantly smaller than this." The DJ, bless him, chose that moment to try to restore order. "Ladies and gentlemen, dinner service will continue momentarily. Please return to your seats." But the damage was done. Half the guests were on their phones, texting or posting about the drama. The other half were whispering frantically, trying to piece together the full story. I walked over to the gift table, where hundreds of thousands of dollars in wrapped presents and envelope gifts sat waiting. I picked up the card box. "These gifts," I announced, "were given under the assumption that I was paying for this wedding. Since that's no longer the case, I'll make sure anyone who wants their gift returned can contact me directly." "You can't do that." Savannah had returned, mascara streaked and hysterical. "Watch me." I handed the box to Rita, who'd been recording everything on her phone for legal purposes. Mark stepped forward, his groomsmen flanking him like they might need to restrain him. "You've made your point. You've humiliated us. What more do you want?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences," I said, finally lowering the microphone. "You stole from me. Not just money, my trust, my credit, my future security. You seated me at the worst table, like I was an embarrassment while using my financial reputation to fund your fantasy. You let her family treat me like a walking ATM while calling another woman Mom." The guests were starting to return to their seats, but the atmosphere had completely changed. The fairy tale wedding had become a cautionary tale. The catering manager approached. "Should we serve the modified menu?" I looked at the 3 of them, Mark, Savannah, and Luann, standing there like defendants awaiting sentencing. "Serve whatever they can actually pay for," I said. Then I handed Mark one final document. "This is a payment plan. $5,000 a month for the next 44 months. Miss one payment, and the fraud charges get filed. Rita will be monitoring your compliance." Mark signed without reading. Broken. I turned to address the room one last time. "Enjoy the rest of your evening. Everyone. Everything from this point forward is courtesy of Mr. and Mrs. Whitman and the Reed family. Every bill, every charge, every debt theirs alone." Then I walked toward the exit, past table 19, where I was supposed to spend the evening in exile, past the head table where Luann had tried to replace me, past the gift table now under legal protection. Behind me, I heard the DJ desperately trying to restart the celebration. Let's get this party going with the couple's first dance. But there would be no magic tonight, no fairy tale ending, just the harsh reality of consequences served cold at a beach wedding that cost $218,000 they didn't have. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. I sat in the conference room at Harborline Credit Union with Michelle and the fraud department director. The wedding was 40 hours behind me, but the paperwork would last much longer. "We're prepared to file charges if the payment plan isn't maintained," Michelle said, sliding the conditional complaint across the table. "But as long as they comply, this stays sealed." I signed where indicated, then moved on to the next order of business, closing every account, cancelling every card, and placing a complete freeze on my credit that would require multiple forms of identification to lift. "Your credit score will recover," the director assured me. "Since you've documented the fraud and taken legal action to transfer the debt, the bureaus will note it appropriately." 820. That number that had taken 35 years to build had dropped to 540 overnight. But it would climb again. This time, no one else would have access to it. Rita called while I was driving home. Mark's attorney reached out. "They want to negotiate the payment terms." No negotiation. That's what I told them. Also, Luann Reed is trying to claim she signed under duress. Good luck with that. 300 witnesses saw her sign voluntarily. Speaking of witnesses, you've gone viral. What? Someone posted a video titled "Mother-in-Law from Hell Destroys Dream Wedding" on TikTok. 12 million views since Saturday night. I pulled over. 12 million. The comments are interesting. Most people are on your side once they understand what really happened. Someone leaked the full story. Probably one of the guests who overheard everything. I sat in my parked car, processing this. My private humiliation and vindication had become public entertainment. When I got home, there were 17 messages on my answering machine. 3 from reporters wanting interviews. 5 from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. 4 from wedding guests wanting to retrieve their gifts. And 1 from Mark. Mum. His recorded voice sounded hollow, defeated. Savannah left for her parents' house. She says she needs space to think. The Reeds are threatening to annul the marriage. They're saying I misrepresented my financial situation. I know you hate me right now, but I deleted it without listening to the rest. He needed, always, what he needed. Tuesday afternoon. Bev came over with wine and the final accounting. Based on the contracts you provided, they're looking at $2,000 in minimum payments just for the credit cards, plus the $5,000 monthly to you. Their combined income is maybe $8,000 after taxes. They'll have to adjust their lifestyle. No more designer clothes? No more country club? No more keeping up with the Reeds? Reality is a harsh teacher. Wednesday brought a FedEx package. Inside were printouts of Savannah's Instagram posts from the honeymoon suite at Breakwater House, a room that cost $3,000 for the night. The photos showed her crying, mascara stained, with captions about family betrayal and toxic in-laws. The last post, though, was different. It was a photo of the payment plan, with a caption, "This is what happens when you marry someone who lies about everything, including their mother's consent." The marriage was eating itself from the inside. Thursday. I met with a financial advisor to restructure my retirement plans. Without the credit card debt, I could still retire at 62 instead of 60, just with a smaller cushion. It would mean downsizing the house, driving the Camry for another 5 years, and forgetting about the European trip I'd been planning. But I would be free. "Your son did significant damage," the advisor said, reviewing my accounts. "Yes," I agreed, "but not irreparable damage." Friday evening, 1 week after the rehearsal dinner where this all started, I received an email from Luann Reed. It was a scanned copy of annulment papers. "Since your son obtained this marriage through financial fraud regarding his family's resources, we are pursuing an annulment. Savannah will be retaining her maiden name and all gifts received." I forwarded it to Rita with a note. "Make sure the debt stays with Mark, regardless of marital status." Rita replied within an hour. "Already built into the contract. He can get divorced, annulled, or become a monk. The debt follows him." Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after the wedding, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the beach at sunrise. Breakwater House was visible in the distance, its white columns glowing pink in the early light. The tent was gone. The flowers were gone. Even the tire tracks from the vintage cars had been smoothed away by the tide. It was like the wedding had never happened. Except for the debt, of course. That was eternal, or at least 44 months of eternal. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark, first payment sent, confirmation, Chartier 47829. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. He'd made his first payment on a very expensive education in consequences. 43 more to go. I stood at the edge of the water, let the cold Atlantic foam wash over my feet, and thought about gifts. Mark had called his theft a gift I was giving him. The Reeds had treated my forced sponsorship as a gift they were entitled to. But the real gift, the one none of them had expected, was the truth. The truth about who they really were when the lights went out and the music stopped. I turned away from Breakwater House and walked back to my car, my phone heavy with the evidence of a family destroyed by its own greed. In my pocket was the original conditional gift letter, the one Mark had signed without reading, the one that had saved my future. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist. Somewhere in Portland. My son was probably waking up in an empty bed, facing bills he couldn't pay and a social reputation he couldn't repair. Somewhere else. Savannah was probably updating her Instagram with quotes about surviving trauma and recognizing red flags. And me, I was driving home to a smaller but cleaner future. One without perfect credit, without the European trip, without a son I could trust, but also without the weight of their expectations, their greed, their casual cruelty. The wedding gift had been returned to sender. Postage due $218,000. They could afford it. After all, it was theirs to begin with. They just hadn't known it yet. I pulled into my driveway, modest but mine, and saw a package on the doorstep. Inside was a crystal picture frame from one of the wedding guests who'd asked for their gift back. There was a note: "You did the right thing. Consequences matter." I placed the empty frame on my mantel. Someday, maybe I'd have a photo worth putting in it. A photo of a future built on truth instead of theft. But for now, the empty frame was perfect. It held nothing but possibility, which was more than enough. The Atlantic wind picked up outside, rattling my windows with the same force that had chilled me on that beach wedding night. But inside my house, paid for with my own credit, warmed by my own choices, I was finally, completely warm. The gift had been returned. The debt had been assigned. The truth had been told. And that was the end of it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts. What would you have done in Eleanor's situation? I read every comment and can't wait to hear your perspectives.